So many people trust Two Rivers Ford. Football players, working moms, business owners. Why? Because Two Rivers Ford has been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.
It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. SEC Media Days begin next week in Dallas. This morning, the Tennessee Vols announced their 3-player participants. They are offensive lineman Cooper Mays, defensive lineman Omari Thomas, and linebacker Keenan Peely. Tennessee will appear in Dallas on Tuesday. Vanderbilt announced their 3 participants, wide receiver Langston Patterson, offensive lineman Gunnar Hansen, and linebacker C.J. Taylor. The Commodores will appear in Dallas on Monday. In NFL news, former Vol and current Steelers cornerback Cam Sutton has been suspended 8 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Sutton was charged with misdemeanor battery earlier this year while he was still with the Detroit Lions. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What, you started eating almonds before the show started? Started gasping and wheezing through your breaking sports news update? Good morning.
I've learned my lesson with the almonds. Unfortunately, I have to add it to my list of foods I cannot eat before any sort of broadcast.
Well, that won't stop you, I'm sure, throughout the duration of our 3-hour broadcast today. Good morning. Welcome in. Got Jackson, got Lucas, got me until 1 o'clock. We've got Josh Pate and Keith Bulluck on the show today. So a crowd to keep you entertained throughout the course of our segment of programming here. 615-737-1045 is how you do it. We also have access to, or rather you have access to the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch if you want to get involved there. Emmett Jones says he's drinking almond milk with his cereal this morning, so not quite the oven-roasted, dark chocolate-covered almonds that Lucas has been shoveling into his face for the better part. That bag seems like it hasn't decreased in volume at all. It's just a never-ending bag of almonds because every time I see you, you've got a fistful of them before the show starts.
They are delightful.
I'm certain. What is less than delightful is the lineup for Tennessee's SEC Media Day contingent. All of the teams, including Texas and Oklahoma, their first SEC Media Days, have been put out as to who will attend. Tennessee, Vandy, Texas A&M, South Carolina, and Kentucky are the only schools among the SEC programs not sending a quarterback this year. We are, less than 2 months away from actual football? My God, that's very exciting. So we will start to get the ramp up officially next week, I suppose, because 3HL is heading on down to SEC Media Days in Dallas. And like I said, Texas and Oklahoma included in that contingent for the first time. 11 total quarterbacks minus the programs that I mentioned who will not be bringing those players. And of the two players that I really cared to hear from the Tennessee Vols, and I know Vols fans will have, plenty of interest in whomever speaks, including Josh Heupel at the podium. I want to hear from Nico Iamaleava, and I want to hear from James Pierce. And I'm dying to know why the hell neither of them are heading to SEC Media Days when you have a first-round pick on your roster and a 5-star quarterback for the first time in forever, who is going to be the future of the program, moving forward, unless something goes terribly, terribly wrong. So you want to tell me why the hell I'm not going to hear from your quarterback, your first-round pass rusher, your projected first-round pass rusher?
I love that. Your reaction to this was hilarious this morning. Like, this is for you. Like, this is for, they're making TikToks and not just putting players in front of microphones. Like, this is not a pitch for people to watch their games. Like, I'm not sure what you think the goal of Media Days is in terms of picking your players.
After you dragged me kicking and screaming through Media Days last year, I'm trying to figure out what the point of any of that nonsense was. That was dumb.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That was terrible.
We don't learn anything. It's just an opportunity for us to get together and talk about SEC football for 4 or 5 days.
Fine.
And hear from coaches and players.
You are happy to do it from the comfort of the studio instead of schlepping down to Dallas. Thank God 3HL is making that trip for us.
You were brutally annoying on that trip last year. But your reaction to this, it's like you think that they are just trying to get the most engaging, content-driven players out there. They're just trying to put players in front of microphones that will represent the program well.
Yeah, and who better to represent the program than the quarterback and the pass rusher?
Well, and I wonder if there is any strategy in this to avoid only getting questions about your quarterback and your passing game, because that is something that happens with this Tennessee football team. I don't think it's a coincidence that they're bringing 2 defensive players and an offensive lineman. Also, you don't typically bring a quarterback that is a redshirt freshman that is starting for the first time. Typically, you're bringing veteran players that are already leaders in the locker room. That's kind of how this works in Media Days. Last year, it was Joe Milton. Hendon Hooker didn't get taken to Media Days. Joe Milton didn't go to Media Days before his first season starting for Tennessee. So, yeah, I get that you would rather hear from Nico Iamaleava. Most people would. Most people would rather hear from James Pierce, but they're going to take leaders in the locker room that can represent the program and can handle themselves in that type of scenario. I don't know that James Pierce can't, but Nico Iamaleava is a very young player. I imagine if he has a solid season next summer, we will see Nico Iamaleava at SEC Media Days.
So to your point, the level of learning done at SEC Media Days in my very, very small experience with it was next to none. So that I would expect to learn something, earth-shaking from Nico Iamaleava or James Pierce is probably not going to happen in this particular setting anyway. Cooper Mays, the center, Keenan Peely, the linebacker, and Amari Thomas, big Amari Thomas, the defensive lineman, will represent Tennessee alongside Josh Heupel in Dallas this week.
What were the schools you mentioned that also are not bringing a quarterback?
Let me scroll back up to my notes. I have Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and South Carolina not bringing quarterbacks this year.
So Vanderbilt, no idea who their starting quarterback is going to be.
Correct.
No idea who South Carolina's starting quarterback is going to be.
I think I have more questions about South Carolina this year than just about any other program not named Alabama.
Yeah. Kentucky will not be bringing Brock Vandegrift, the Georgia transfer, who figures to be the starter in Lexington, first-year starter. Texas A&M will not bring Connor Wegman, who figures to be the starter, who has started multiple games for the Aggies before he went down with an injury last year. Interesting that those are the schools that are not bringing their quarterbacks, but most schools are going to bring veteran leaders, and I think Tennessee would like to divert the attention to their defense and offensive line rather than just fielding questions about the passing game, which they are very used to at this point.
Was that the most annoyed that you've been with me in our now going on 4 years of doing the show?
Without question. Yes, at Media Days. The way you opened the show with this, woe is me, I have to talk about SEC football today.
No.
For 4 days in a row.
No.
Oh, it was so brutal. It was so brutal.
One, because it wasn't really talking SEC football. It was a car wash. You're correct. I should have been more willing to embrace the circus that is SEC Media Day, because in most circumstances, I'm down for a little bit of circus. But that whole situation where there's not an actual point to it other than, hey, let's just designate a week to talk college football, which is fine.
Yeah, what's the point of Super Bowl Radio Row? You know what I mean?
Oh, no, I think that's dumb too.
Yeah, it's the same concept.
No, you'll get no pushback, but I can have issue with both because I find Super Bowl Radio Row a pretty useless exercise. And I guess because I guess I had a certain level of expectation, having never done it before, Lucas, that there was going to be something of substance, that there was going to be something of consequence. And that, that if we were going to do this thing, that we would get to actually learn something from the players and the coaches or whomever might walk by our table in this car wash situation. So I understand that I probably ruined it for you, and I feel bad about that. I do. I genuinely feel bad about that because I'm not trying to take away from your joy in that, and you seemed happy as all hell to be there, whereas I was looking around and just saying, like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here if not to actually learn something? Why are all of these people crammed into this tiny little hallway in what was it? It wasn't the Omni.
It was the Omni.
No. It's not the Omni. It's the new one. Or one of the newer ones that's around the Amazon footprint. I'm blanking on the hotel. Either way, I was just incredibly frustrated by the fact that all these people were here for nothing, as far as I could tell. For nothing really, other than whatever the commissioner might say. And that was basically it. Now, this year is a little different. You got a little Texas and Oklahoma flavor to it, and that's something of consequence. That's something of substance. That's something new into the mix. But I want there to be a point anytime we do things like this. And so if my tone was bad a year later, or a little more than a year later, a little less than a year later, I do apologize for that. But I could not have been less... I don't know. I could not have been less engaged by the subject matter that was in front of us, other than we were an on-air preview magazine for the better part of 4 days.
Yes, which I loved.
Sure.
So and you're not alone. Like, I know
the Grand Hyatt.
The Grand Hyatt is where it was. Thank you, Ronnie, in the FNM Bank chat. I know multiple college football national reporters and writers that will refuse to go to media days.
No, I can't wait for Josh Pate to come in here and back me up.
Sure.
I know Pate's my ally on this.
Absolutely. Pate is going to be there, though, every day in Dallas, I would imagine, like he was in Nashville last year. But for me, it was just an opportunity. It always is an opportunity to sit for 4 straight days and talk about nothing but SEC football and be in the same room as every SEC head coach and 3 players from every SEC program. It's also very much that indicator of like, oh, here we go.
Sure.
Like, football season's right around the corner. We're locking in. We're talking about these rosters. We're talking about expectations. And I love that stuff. So, and in the couple of years prior to last year, SEC Media Days had groundbreaking news, like massive breaking news. Texas and Oklahoma, that came down in the middle of SEC Media Days.
Not at the one we were at.
A couple of years ago. So in the last couple of years, we've had these big momentum swinging college football history making type of news come down.
No, I remember Butch Jones's last SEC Media Days, and a very good friend of mine, Julian Council, was down there, asked him a question. That's not fair. You don't know who Julian Council is? That's not a famous person.
You're still trying to flex. Oh, my good friend asked Butch Jones a question.
We worked together. We did. That's the first. That's the first person ever gets stuck with me as a co-host.
Unfortunately, I'm with Buck on this one, Jackson. I think you're getting too power hungry on the fine button.
No, I think, honest to God, you're going to start getting fined anytime you abuse the button system back there. Because if I swear to God, I'm limiting you to 1 Trump drop a month moving forward. And if I hear it more than once,
I did everything right, and they indicted me.
There goes your July allotment.
That's July.
Okay,
that's not July.
That is July.
That's July.
I'm keeping notes. Don't you worry. When it comes to doling out punishments around here, I'm on top of my game. But my point being, with this, if the purpose, Lucas, because I think you've kind of talked yourself in a circle here, based on my reaction to not seeing Nico Iamaleava and James Pierce. If the point is to generate excitement for the audience about college football being right around the corner, then I feel that I'm entitled to be a little disappointed by the fact that the first round pass rusher and the quarterback are people that I'm not going to hear from. Like, when am I going to hear from Nico Iamaleava and James Pierce prior to the season starting?
Oh, at some point in some media availability, players speak with the media, and college football coaches can decide how they manage that type of thing. Nick Saban typically didn't let players speak to the media often. Josh Heupel does. They'll do podium stuff. But no, I see what you're saying, and I, too, would love to hear from James Pierce. Iamaleava, I'm not surprised. It's just very rare to see redshirt freshmen, first-year starting quarterbacks go with the head coach to SEC Media Days. Those roles are typically reserved for players that have been in the program, that are veterans, that are leaders of the locker room.
And I don't care about that.
I'm not even sure.
I want the quarterback.
And that's why I like media days, is because it generates excitement. It doesn't mean that that's the job of programs to bring players that they just want veteran players that can speak for the program in a way that the head coach and the top of the program appreciates. So I also would have liked to hear from James Pierce, but Omari Thomas has been a leader in this locker room for multiple years now. Keenan Peely is about 36 years old with like 3 kids or something. And I agree with you that I would have liked to hear. And Cooper Mays also has been in the program forever through multiple head coaches. So not shocked at all that Nico Iamaleava is not there. But Pierce, though, I'm with you. I probably would have liked to hear from James Pierce.
615-737-1045 is the number. So you want to do a little preview magazine talk?
Ooh, my favorite.
Okay, look at that. You got every once in a while you got to throw them a little foreplay to get them back interested. How Tennessee breaks into the top tier of the SEC this coming season. We'll talk about it coming up next.
In 45 minutes, doors open at Hattie B's locations all across Middle Tennessee, with the exception of the factory at Franklin. That's because their doors have been open since 7 a.m. with breakfast. Hey, guys, it's Lucas Panzica. If you haven't gotten a chance to try Hattie B's new breakfast menu, you got to do yourself a favor and check it out. The classic hot chicken biscuit, the hot chicken and waffle stack. I could go on. It delivers every time, but you know Hattie B's has the best hot chicken in town. They hand bread their fried chicken, cooked to order. Add your spice level, hot or not. You want to go mild, medium, all the way up to shut the clock up. Whatever works for you. With your favorite piece of chicken, tender sandwich wings, or the half bird if you're hungry. And they have the best sides in town. The baked beans are incredible. The pimento mac and cheese, the bacon cheese grits. Top it off with some banana pudding or peach cobbler, which you get, by the way, for free just by downloading the Hattie B's app. That's right. You get a free dessert by downloading the Hattie B's app. Order for pickup through the app. Skip the line, walk in, get your Hattie B's famous hot chicken and head back home or to the office, or order it for delivery and visit Hattie B's today.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Don't forget, if you enjoy me being embarrassed, Josh Pate will be in studio for the second annual iteration of college football trivia with Josh Pate. I finished over 500 last year, which means I win.
Big upset last year. Big upset. So we've been watching tape and coming back stronger than ever.
But it sounds like the questions are a bit more extreme this year, because it's my understanding that Pate is asking for questions to be removed because he may not even know the answer to some of these questions.
He does have more creative control this year over the trivia questions.
That's not good news for me.
So of the 15 that I submitted, he highlighted 2 of them saying he does not know the answer, therefore they are not fair. And they are very difficult. I don't know many college football fans that would know those. Josh Pate is in the F&M Bank chat, and he said, this better not suck. Unfortunately,
it's incumbent upon him to make sure it doesn't suck. Well, I'm just along for the ride.
If that's your goal for this not to stink, then this might be the wrong show for you.
Well, I mean, I think that we strive, to just stay slightly above sucky.
We strive for mediocrity around here,
because very rarely do we achieve even baseline mediocrity. But still, we soldier on. So, speaking of breaking out of mediocrity, how does the Tennessee Volunteer football program do just that and enter the top tier of the SEC in 2024? So, we've had a version of this conversation before relating to recruiting. And probably the most broad way to answer this question is to say, well, they need to recruit at the same level as Georgia has, as Alabama has historically under Nick Saban. We'll see what that looks like under Caleb DeBoer. Moving forward, Kalen. I always do that. Kalen DeBoer,
not his evil twin brother Caleb.
You don't know. It could be a body swap situation. He doesn't actually have a twin. We're just making bleep up at this point. But I guess beyond recruiting and sticking to specifically this season, let's start here. Let's set the baseline. Who are the top tier programs in the SEC? Georgia, obviously. Are we putting Alabama?
Yes.
Okay. Because they did lose a lot in the transfer portal, but they also did bring over...
They gained a whole hell of a lot.
Just as much... I mean, I don't want to say just as much talent as they lost, but it's kind of a push for Alabama.
They're one of the most loaded rosters in the country, yes.
You feel pretty good about Alabama.
Yes.
So my definition for top tier is probably going to stop after those 2. Does Texas deserve a seat at this table, having appeared in the college football playoff last year, understanding that we are a little uncertain about their quarterback situation, though they don't seem to be that uncertain about their quarterback situation? I don't know that I would be comfortable putting anybody other than Texas in that list of 2, because if we're going to tier this thing, then I don't think the tiers need to be even. I think in the same way that we talk about like elite quarterback play, there might be only one elite quarterback any given year in the NFL out of the 32. But people like to, I think, kind of water that down sometimes.
I put Texas there because they are the only SEC school that have recruited close to the level of Alabama and Georgia. They have, in back-to-back years now, had the 3rd best SEC class behind Alabama and Georgia. I understand the class of 2023 for Texas is not technically an SEC class, but you know what I mean. They are a Power 5 conference champion. They've broken through with a college football playoff appearance. They were 1 or 2 plays away from being in the national championship game, which who knows what would happen from there. And, Quinn Ewers, if there is uncertainty there, Arch Manning is right behind him. And the recruiting machine that is Texas football is not stopping. So I'm very comfortable putting Texas in that top tier.
The school that I'm not really sure what to do with, and I'm kind of tempted to put them in their own tier for this season, is Ole Miss. Because I believe Ole Miss to be ahead of Tennessee. And I think most college football fans would probably agree with me there. With what Lane Kiffin has, Portal King that he has been, adding as much talent to the roster as I think he's had at any point in his tenure in Oxford, does Ole Miss deserve their own tier in this conversation? Or are we going to put them in with Tennessee despite acknowledging that they are ahead of Tennessee?
They're ahead in that they have strung together more consistency in terms of double-digit win seasons, just in that they've done it more than once in this era. And Tennessee just has the 11 wins under Heupel in 2022. this is a really good roster for Ole Miss, and it helps them that they are not trapped in the West and that they don't have to get over the hump that is facing Alabama. They don't play Alabama this year. They play Georgia this year at home, late season. They don't play Alabama, and that is the roadblock they have continuously run into under Lane Kiffin. But it plays out favorably for Ole Miss this year. I'm willing to put them at the top of Tier 2.
So who else is in Tier 2? Because I think LSU belongs in Tier 2. I think that, as you mentioned, Ole Miss belongs in Tier 2. I'm willing to put Oklahoma in that Tier 2.
Yeah, I am too. And I'm putting Missouri in there. Coming back off a double-digit win season, returning their quarterback, returning who I think will be the first receiver whose name is called in the draft in Luther Burden next year. There's a lot to be excited about. There's production to replace for sure on both sides, but with the way Missouri broke through last season and what they bring back, they very comfortably, to me, should be in this Tier 2, and then I think it ends there, personally.
And I agree, because if I'm going to put Missouri at the bottom of Tier 2, I would probably put Missouri and Tennessee pretty close to one another, but then I'm going to relegate Tennessee to a Tier 3 team in this year's SEC. How then can they break through? Because we're talking, the discussion that you wanted to have this morning is top tier. And right now, unless Nico has, nothing short of a Heisman Trophy season, I don't know how they could just outright leapfrog the programs that we're talking about in Missouri, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and who else did we mention in that?
It was Ole Miss, Tennessee, Missouri, Oklahoma, and LSU. But when you're talking about LSU as a program, yes, but for this season, then you can argue either way, because defense should take a step forward. Offense is going to take a step back. So it'll be interesting to play out. But yes, does Tennessee get back to what they were in 2022 with a higher level talent profile at quarterback in Nico than Hendon Hooker was? Because Josh Heupel squeezed everything he could have out of Hendon Hooker, right, in that season. Can Heupel get that and then some with Nico Iamaleava, who is a better pro prospect coming out, was a bigger high school football prospect coming out? I don't know. Josh Pate says he's so angry listening to this.
Well, he'll have his time. He's got about an hour before he can come in here and blow off
some steam.
He's
shaking.
So I wonder what he most takes issue with. I suppose we'll ask him in about an hour.
I suppose.
So what can they do to make that legitimate jump? Because, just looking at some of the programs who were considering top tier, Alabama scoring 34 points per game last year, giving up less than 20 as far as opponents scoring against. Georgia scoring north of 40 points per game and allowing less than 16 points per game. And I'm just doing this by very, very basic counting stats. Tennessee averaging 31.8 in 2023 and allowing opponents to score 20.3 against them. Defensively has been the thing that they've needed to build up the most. They've been able to manufacture. They have had talent on the offensive side of the ball. We're not that far removed from 2022 where you had Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Hendon Hooker, and a top 10 pick at right tackle in Darnell Wright all go to the NFL draft, and then, you replace that, or you try to replace that as best you can, and Joe Milton is not Hendon Hooker in that offense, and you understand why they slumped a little bit, but it was always viewed, at least I think we all around here always viewed it, as a stopgap year. Like, you just have to get through the Milton year to get to the Nico Iamaleava tenure at Tennessee, however that looks. I struggle, though, putting them in a third tier, Tennessee, but it's the consistency. We have the flash in the pan year that 2022 was. That's the anomaly to date. We have a solid year for Tennessee last season, managing the situation, managing the roster attrition that they had, and still looking like we expect them to look in most of these games. Defensively is where the recruiting is obviously picked up under Josh Heupel's tenure, and you understand how well staffed that coaching staff is. with so many high-level recruiters on it and how that's paid dividends throughout the course of now multiple seasons because we are heading into 4 years of Josh Heupel?
Yeah.
On Rocky Top. So am I doing Tennessee a disservice by placing them, by thinking that they start this season in Tier 3? Because I'm even having a hard time justifying that, understanding that programs like Missouri and LSU have fared better in recent memory, but this is a different season.
Sure, just in that there is a lot to prove still. Nico Iamaleava has not started a full season, but when you look at what made Tennessee a double-digit win team in 2022, what brought them to the cusp of the 4-team playoff? Okay, Josh Heupel, elite quarterback play, good offensive line play to power a good running game, and a very talented and deeply productive wide receiver core. So how does that transfer over to 2024? Those are the biggest factors that made Tennessee an 11-win team in 2022, beat Alabama, all of those things. Okay, Heupel's still there. The quarterback can be elite. He showed flashes of that against a very good defense in the bowl game in Iowa, 35-0 final. A deeper wide receiver core, without question, the deepest that he has had so far at Tennessee.
But my holdup, just before you move on, do they use the depth? Because the rotation for the wide receivers has been pretty consistently tight under Josh Heupel. So while I appreciate that there is that depth, and maybe, because you'll experience injuries throughout the course of the season, you don't know how to predict that. And you hope that it can you're trying to get to the point where a lot of these top tier programs are, where you can plug and play 5-star, 4-stars all over the place and keep the thing rolling. So it's not, you don't necessarily have to utilize all of that depth, but how much does that depth actually come into play?
It's a fair question, and it's going to be a really interesting question to answer this season because that 2022 team, all of those key players, Tillman, Hyatt, and we'll say,
with the exception of Hendon Hooker at the end. Are you talking about health?
Well, I'm talking about all of those contributors in 2022 that made Tennessee season what it was. We'll say Tillman, Hyatt, and Hooker. None of those were brought in by Josh Heupel. None of them.
Yeah.
So now doing it with players that were brought to this program by Josh Heupel, Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Chris Brazzell, the Tulane transfer, and the depth there, Mike Matthews, the 5-star receiver in the wings. That's what gets people excited about what this Tennessee offense can be in terms of re-energizing what they did in 2022. Now, what held Tennessee back in 2022? Like, to you, what were the key things that held Tennessee back from actually being a playoff team in 2022?
Well, I mean, the South Carolina game.
The South Carolina game.
That's
defense.
Most glaringly. The defense, I mean, giving up, looking that lifeless against Spencer Rattler, when Spencer Rattler hadn't really done that to anybody all season long, that I can remember off the top of my head. Yep. I would have to go and refresh my memory about Spencer Rattler's 2022 season. But that was the Spencer Rattler moment, and it happened to come at Tennessee's expense. The defensive back play is probably the thing that sticks out the most in my mind.
Sure. And just overall depth. That was not a deep enough roster to actually contend for a national championship. The offense elevated that team in a way that made them look like national championship contenders. Truly, though, with the bones of the roster, Tennessee, I don't think, was a national title contender in 2022. You beat Alabama, yes, but the amount of things that had to go right for you in that game and to go toe-to-toe and outscoring Alabama in that game, we saw what a national championship contender looks like when Tennessee played Georgia that year, and Georgia caved Tennessee's offensive line in that game. Their defensive back stifled Tennessee's receivers. Vols couldn't get anything going. So if we're going to go with defense, specifically the defensive backfield and overall depth, okay, those three things are very much improved from 2022 to 2024. So if you're talking about Tennessee elevating from that 10, 11 win season, that has to carry over. The offense has to carry over to 24 with a quarterback that this coach brought in, receivers that this coach brought in, and what figures to be a better offensive line in 2024 than it was in 2022. If that all carries over and you get a similar offensive profile and the defense is elevated with an emphasis on the pass rush because Tennessee is better. They're more athletic. They're as athletic as they've been in the defensive backfield under Heupel. But they have an opportunity to have one of the best pass rushing units in the SEC. And it's not just James Pierce, who is being talked about as a potential number 1 overall pick. It's Caleb Herring continuing to grow into this program. Like, there is depth along. I mean, it's Joshua Josephs. There is depth along the pass rushing unit and along the defensive line that gives you hope that those 10-11 wins could maybe be turned into 11-12 wins and into a 12-team college football playoff spot. So that's the biggest key for me, is looking at the things that held Tennessee back from 2022 and how that applies to 2024. Yet still, I think this team, I think Georgia football is still Tennessee proof. Like, I don't know that Tennessee still, I don't think, is deep enough to compete with Georgia football. So how do we organize the parameters of Tennessee getting into the top tier of the SEC?
Well,
if we still think they're going to fall short of Georgia, who is right now the pinnacle of the conference.
The Oklahoma game is critical this year because that's a program that we're, at least in your and I's discussion, we'll see how Pate feels about it here in just a little bit. Oklahoma is the best opportunity, I guess, for a prove-it game beyond Georgia, which you're kind of looking at and saying, I don't think this is the year quite. Again, unless I almost said Hendon Hooker, unless Nico has the kind of season that none of us expected Hendon Hooker to have, because I sure as hell didn't expect that from Hendon Hooker before the season started. Josh Heupel didn't expect that from Hendon Hooker. That's why Joe Milton started the year. I'm looking at the Oklahoma game. I'm circling the Oklahoma game if I'm a Tennessee fan and saying, okay, if we want to really, talk about, I don't want to just say getting back to that point, but announcing themselves truly, then that game, it's in Norman, right?
Yeah.
That game in Norman is a huge opportunity to puff your chest out, walk into Oklahoma Stadium and say, okay, enough of this. We are at least able to compete on the same level, if not better or best you in your own place.
Now, Oklahoma had a similar year this past season that Tennessee had in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Year two of the program, you see a spike in offensive production. You see the signature win for OU against Texas. Tennessee, it was, of course, Alabama in 2022. They do not return the quarterback, and Jackson Arnold, the 5-star, is going to be the starter this year for OU. But there are some parallels there. Obviously, the profile of the head coach very different, with Brent Venables being a defensive guy. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, that Week 4 game in Norman is a massive tone setter for, okay, what kind of season are we really going to have here? And I think that opinion will largely be based on what happens in Norman. And 12-team playoff, that's the era we're in. So Tennessee can lose that game. Tennessee could lose 2, maybe 3 games and still be in contention for the 12-team playoff. But, yes, all eyes are going to be on that game. Got to get through NC State first, Week 2 at a neutral site.
What do I have to give away for the next segment, Jackson?
Family 4-pack for NSC taking on Orlando July 17th at Geodis Park.
Okay, to win the family 4-pack of Nashville SC tickets, all you need to do coming up next is call in and give us the thing that made you say, oh no. 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. 615-737-1045 is the number. Call in. Tell us what made you say, oh, no, this week and win a family 4-pack of Nashville SC tickets to their it's the next home game at Geodis Park?
Next home game, which is a week from tomorrow when they host Eastern Conference rival Orlando.
So if you want a great experience at one of the cities, Geodis is as fun an in-stadium experience as anything but like a Preds playoff game, to be honest with you. Like, Bridgestone for a playoff game is different than anything that I've experienced in my time here. But Geodis Park is a great time. So if you want a family 4-pack, if you want to take you, your significant other, perhaps another set of friends, or if you have children, you can take them too. 615-737-1045 for the chance to win some Nashville SC tickets. Just tell us what made you say, oh, no. I'll start. Have either of you experienced in your life chafing?
Yes.
What is the best solution to chafing?
I don't know.
Baby powder is the answer to your question. Now, if you are somebody who is of just at least of the average, how big is the average male human being? It's like 5'10", 5'9", something like that.
I think 5'10" is like the average height.
Okay, so I'm 6'2", and in my life I've been closer to 250 pounds than I am right now. I'm about 202 at this point, but I have dealt with chafing in my life. Baby powder is the best solution. The Twins player Joe Ryan was caught on camera literally dumping an entire, is it a container of baby powder just down his pants on camera trying to deal with some chafing. I don't know if he's got some fire crotch stuff going on. I don't know what's going on with Joe Ryan as he's dumping literally an entire container of baby powder. He just pulls his uniform pants up and like almost like a cartoon commercial, or a cartoon scene, just dumps the entire thing of baby powder down his pants. It's just in the middle
I'm seeing it now.
of the 7th inning. It's a funnier visual bit, but I'm sure many of you can imagine somebody just pulling their pants forward and taking an entire. Might as well have just taken the cap off and dumped the whole thing of baby powder down his pants.
The camera is on Carlos Correa, who has just hit a home run, and he's going back into the Twins dugout. And so the camera's just following him, high-fiving players in the dugout. And Joe Ryan high-fives him, too. And it's while they're chatting, the camera's still on Correa. And then Ryan, in the background of the shot, you're right, he dumps the entire thing in there and then continues his conversation with Correa. That was fantastic.
Completely normal for a baseball player, but to have it caught on camera unintentionally was the thing that made me say, oh, no.
Oh, man. Mine is the fact that we are 1 week removed now from the U.S.'s elimination from Copa America, a tournament they are hosting after the loss to Uruguay last Monday. And Greg Berhalter is still the coach of the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah. By the way, congratulations to plucky underdog Uruguay for their victory.
For eliminating my Brazilians as well in the quarterfinal and penalty shootout. That's a whole other
stick with me for a while.
Top U.S. assistant B.J. Callahan is now the head coach of Nashville Soccer Club. He will begin his era at the end of this month. But Greg Berhalter remains the coach of the U.S. It does not mean that he will be long-term, but how quiet it is has made me nervous, and I will continue to wait and see if a change is made. Meanwhile, American manager Jesse Marsh leads the plucky Canadian underdogs all the way to the semifinal.
Actually plucky underdogs.
Plucky underdog Canada. By the way, shout out Nashville winger Jacob Schaffelberg, who scored a critical goal in the quarterfinal against Venezuela to help Canada advance. They will play Argentina in the semifinal tonight of Copa America, while the Americans are home, except Jesse Marsh coaching the Canadians.
Jackson?
What's up?
You going to play the game?
Yeah, I just wanted to mess with you a little. Mine is Brandon Ayuk, as he yesterday posted a picture of himself watching Commanders practice film, a team he does not play for. He is
famously, where does Brandon Ayuk play?
He plays for the San Francisco 49ers.
Correct.
Obviously a very volatile, would you say, contract situation in San Francisco with Brandon Ayuk.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his best friends is new Commanders quarterback Jane Daniels. And this is definitely OTA film with Daniels at quarterback for the Commanders that Ayuk is watching.
And he's posting it on his Instagram story. I mean, I just think he's still going to end up in San Francisco. I don't know why you would want to go play for the Command other than the money. Like, I get the money element of it, right? If you're a wide receiver, if you see the Justin Jefferson contract and you think that you can get maybe not that value, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 million plus on an average annual basis, and you feel underpaid, then I understand, trying to leverage your situation as best as humanly possible. But doesn't it just feel like he's shouting into the wind for nobody to hear him? Like, his agent's clearly given him a playbook on how to bother the most amount of people in the most efficient fashion. It's not one for one what A.J. Brown did, but it's pretty close. And listen, this is done on the advice of representation. This is not just a malcontent, trying to strategically bother people the way that Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and before him, A.J. Brown were able to do. This is one of the more, I don't know, futile, it seems, contract negotiation tactics by a wide receiver who seems displeased.
I wonder what is going to happen with Brandon Ayuk. If you have to predict what Brandon Ayuk will be doing or who he will be playing for in 2024.
More likely a San Francisco 49er. And listen, that's pure speculation on my part. I haven't heard anything to the effect of Brandon Ayuk might or might not get moved. And I haven't. The Titans aren't in on Brandon Ayuk, so that's out of my purview. But if you had to make me make an uneducated guess, I'd say it's more likely than not that he ends up on the team that he's still under contract with.
Like, is no news good news for Niners fans that want Ayuk to continue to be a Niner?
Yeah, because, it's kind of like T. Higgins. Like, you can let him throw his hissy in the offseason if you want to, and at the end of the day, he's still better off playing football for that team than he is not playing football this coming season. T. Higgins a little different with the situation and the tag, but I don't know. Ayuk doesn't seem to have the leverage that he wants to have in this circumstance, especially when they're drafting Ricky Pearsall in the first round. All right, 615-737-1045, the number. You have some headlines for me?
I've got headlines.
That's an upset because there's been damn near no NFL news, so we'll find out what NFL headlines Lucas has coming up next.
11 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzika from the 104.5 The Zone studios. SEC Media Days begin next week in Dallas. This morning, the Tennessee Vols announced their 3-player participants. They are offensive lineman Cooper Mays, defensive lineman Omari Thomas, and linebacker Keenan Peely. Tennessee will appear in Dallas on Tuesday. Vanderbilt announced their 3 participants. They are wide receiver Langston Patterson, a local product, offensive lineman Gunnar Hansen, and linebacker C.J. Taylor. The Commodores will speak on Monday. In college baseball news, Tennessee star outfielder Hunter Ensley has announced he will return for another season on Rocky Top. In NFL news, former Vol and current Steelers cornerback Cam Sutton has been suspended 8 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Sutton was charged with misdemeanor battery earlier this year while he was still a Detroit Lion. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour is upon us. It's the NFL dead season, but apparently Lucas Panzika has brought us NFL headlines. We'll get to them here in just a second. Josh Pate is going to join us in 20 minutes from now. We'll do a little college football trivia. What is the punishment if I finish under 500 this year?
Helmet of shame, whole show tomorrow.
Helmet of shame for the whole show tomorrow. Do we have anybody on the show that would be like my goal for things like that, the visual bits, is that we get aggregated or something goes viral and I'm, doing it with the helmet of shame on my head. So do we have anything exciting, anything spicy that might fit that mold?
You worry about your shameless pursuit of clout. I don't care about that. Ramon Foster will be in studio, though, so there's that.
So perhaps we can get a viral moment with Ramon and try and get the helmet of shame in the mix.
Also, if you can submit a listener question, college football trivia that stumps Buck, the best question, whoever gives us the best question will receive the Hattie B's Feed Your Flock pack. So you can either reply to the poll question on Buck's Twitter at Buck Rising, or you can DM me at Lucas Panzika with a college football trivia question to stump Buck.
There you go. So you have headlines in a headlineless time?
It's time for headlines with Lucas Panzika. Ba-dum.
Pittsburgh Steelers defensive back Cam Sutton has been suspended 8 games by the NFL without pay for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. Sutton entered a pretrial diversion program in April to resolve a domestic violence case. He was charged with misdemeanor battery in March. That's when he was a Detroit Lion. You can remember Cam Sutton kind of went on the lam for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Nobody knew where he was. He eventually turned himself into police. Seems like the situation is getting resolved, but he will miss about half the season as he is back in Pittsburgh, the place he was drafted out of Tennessee.
He's going to appeal. We'll see what happens. He did enter a pretrial diversion program back in April to resolve the domestic violence case, according to the court records. And so that, I think, is why Pittsburgh was comfortable bringing him back after that had begun. Misdemeanor battery in Hillsborough County, Florida, on March 31st is when he turned himself in after Lucas mentioned he was wanted for weeks by the police. So, he's not spoken publicly, has he? There's been no Cam Sutton media availability to my knowledge, or at least I haven't seen any headlines come out of that specifically. It's all been about updates on that. People are saying that my punishment from here on out on the show should be to wear a Zach Edey Memphis jersey. I'm not going to do that. But for the Pittsburgh Steelers, apparently they feel comfortable with the player enough and the place where his legal situation is in to bring him back in. It is really, I don't want to say it's no risk to Pittsburgh, but it does seem that, we've been through this before. There are plenty of teams that will be opportunistic when there is little cost, actual expense associated with a player that they believe can help them. In the case of Cam Sutton, they believe that he is going to be valuable corner depth And
which he has been for them in the past.
Yeah, his issues, though, are less than ideal.
Yeah, it was a crazy story. The Lions were the ones that informed him that a warrant was out for his arrest, and he left the facility, and then nobody heard from him for a couple weeks. But he is in Pittsburgh, and we'll see if his appeal works in any way.
He did make a statement, actually. My job is not to appeal to someone else when asked about his message to fans who might question his alleged actions. My job is to be the best version of myself, and how do I give that off to the masses, or how do I give that off to everyone around me? I'm in full control of that, so I'm never worried about a narrative. I'm never worried about what necessarily people say, because obviously, more than likely, they don't know me more than anybody else. It gets back to your foundation, your morals, who you are individually as a human being, and just what you stand on. It goes on at some length. So he's taken a bit of a stance here, and to cite morals in the middle of a domestic violence situation is not, I don't know. I mean, perhaps he will be vindicated. We'll see.
Well, speaking of defensive backs getting suspended, veteran free agent defensive back Deshaun Gibson Sr. has been suspended 6 games for violating the league's PED policy. Now, Gibson is not with a team currently. He was with the San Francisco 49ers last year, but he released a statement, and it feels like we get at least one of these a year now, every offseason in the NFL. Here's the statement from Gibson. Quote, "During this offseason, I took a supplement one time, which I thought to be completely safe and well within any of the NFL's policies. It was in no way related to performance, training, or gaining an advantage of any kind at any time. I have competed at this level for a long time, and I have nothing but respect for the game and the fraternity of players in it." He goes on to say, "The NFL's policy on performance-enhancing substances is clear. I take full responsibility for anything I put into my body. It is with great disappointment that I accept this suspension, and I do so knowing that I have never even attempted to cheat the game. I look forward to returning for my 13th NFL season and helping a team compete for a championship."
Can you say that you take full responsibility and then offer qualifiers afterwards? I mean, I guess you can. And he has no choice. He has to accept the punishment.
Yeah. I mean, if it's true that he took a supplement that was in no way intended to be a performance enhancer and he got suspended for it, he can recognize, I take responsibility. I am responsible for what goes into my body. But no, this was not an attempt to cheat the game. I'm fine with the statement if that's what happened.
And, we don't have enough information to believe him or not believe him one way or the other. Do you remember when Lawan got pops for this?
Yeah.
People hammered him here locally for it. And, I think...
Because Lawan was very important to his team here, right? Like, this is a current free agent, veteran defensive back that is not with the team at the moment.
Which is arguably, that's a more important situation for the player to get out there and be like, hey, it's not a cheater, not trying to game the system or anything like that. Like, give me a job, please. I'm still a viable player. For Lawan, it cost his team considerable time, because was that the 19 season that he was suspended at the start of? I want to say, because 20 he tore his ACL.
Because who filled in for him mostly? Quessenberry?
It was either Quessenberry or Dennis Kelly, I want to say. I think it was the start of the 19 season, because in the opener of 18 he had the body bag situation where he got concussed and Delaney snapped his ankle. I want to say it was the start of 19.
Yeah, 19. That's right.
But I remember talking to him about it, because I remember I had the story. Somebody had contacted me saying, hey, Taylor Lewan is in here getting a bunch of supplements tested at the time for things that would trigger the performance-enhancing substance test that the NFL gives out. And it was something ridiculous. And I need to go back and look at I wrote an article a long, long time ago. It was something like 27 different kinds of supplements that he was taking at the time, which is probably not that uncommon when you see how big the offensive linemen are during their playing time and how much smaller they get after they're done playing. God knows what they're pumping themselves full of.
Well, it feels like we're good for one of these in offseason. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins a few years ago when he was with Arizona dealt with this as well. Defensive end Jerry Hughes has re-signed with the Houston Texans for his 15th season. He will be 36 this season, turns 36 in August, had 9 sacks in 2022, 3 sacks in 2023, and that Texas front seven continues to get deeper.
Jerry Hughes has been around. 15 years is an eternity in the NFL, but he's one of these mercenary free agent pass rushers that you like to see at this time of year, because they can legitimately help your team in spot pass rush duty, right? The Titans tried this a couple years ago with Cam Wake. It worked for a game. Remember the Cleveland Browns game where I think he had 2 sacks, damn near had a safety.
He did.
And that was about all that Cam Wake did the rest of the season.
He had 2 sacks in week 1, and I think he finished the season with 2.5.
That's right. So, you don't want your 37-year-old free agent pass rusher to be your primary means of pass rush, as he was kind of intended to be for the Titans that season. The Titans legend Cam Wake, I forgot about that brief moment in time, that very, very brief moment in time. But for a team like the Titans, a guy like Jerry Hughes, or at least
a team like the Texans.
No. I mean a team like the Titans, because the Texans are doing this.
Oh, okay.
The Titans should also be considering veteran pass rush options to supplement what they have, because I would argue this is one of the weaker pass edge rush groups. Maybe not pass rush groups. We'll see what happens with Simmons and Sweat. But it's one of the weaker edge rush groups that could stand with some veteran help at the end of their careers. We've talked about this with Terrell Suggs, Arizona Cardinals legend, Terrell Suggs, Kansas City Chief. Didn't Suggs win a Super Bowl with the Chiefs? I believe.
I think he did. Yes,
the first one with Mahomes.
I think he was on that first Super Bowl team.
So there are examples of this every year in the league. The Titans are another team, not just safety help, but edge rush help. I would continue to consider if I was that organization, and I know that they very much are.
Even someone like Derek Barnett,
I'm saying,
right? That could have been a good rotational depth piece. Also signed with the Texans. Barnett, local guy, went to Brentwood Academy. Jacksonville Jaguars will keep it in the division. Edge rusher Josh Allen has changed his name to Josh Hines Allen. He says it is a tribute to his maternal family. His sisters use the Hines Allen last name, and his sister Maisha plays for the Washington Mystics. She's a very good WNBA player. She uses that last name on the back of her jersey. He says he will start to do it as well. Totally not a way to differentiate him from Buffalo Bills starting quarterback Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, because my initial reaction, because I saw this headline this morning, I threw my hands up and said, another one? Really?
This is as good of a reason as we've seen.
It is a good reason. And also because of the player who also shares his name. It's not like Shaq Leonard and Darius Leonard where they're the same person, and apparently he's flip-flopped it back again here recently.
Snip, snap, snip, snap.
So if ever anybody had a viable excuse to do one of these NFL name changes, it is now Josh Hines Allen, not the Bills quarterback Josh Allen.
That one's going to take a minute.
Josh Hines Allen?
Yeah, to just call him Josh Hines. I mean, when you've been following a guy, like if you've been following Josh Allen since his college days at Kentucky, watching him explode at Kentucky, be a first-round pick. I mean, at this point, he's a veteran. And then suddenly to start calling him Hines Allen, that's going to take a minute for a lot of fans. But more power to him. Those are the headlines.
All right, very good. Look at that. Actual NFL news happening. Josh Pate in studio to embarrass me with some college football trivia. We are also going to select an audience question to try and stump me for the opportunity to win a Feed Your Flock package from Hattie B's, a $75 gift card to the best hot chicken place in town. So we will have Pate in studio coming up next. Is arthritic joint pain keeping you from doing the things that you love? Bone-on-bone pain in your knees, hips, back, or shoulders is the worst if you've been dealing with it, especially at this time of year. Listen, there are exciting new cellular therapies that can get you lasting relief. QC Kinetics is helping patients like you every day. They're the nation's leader in advanced regenerative medicine. I'm talking cutting-edge treatments that accelerate your own body's healing properties, revitalizing your joints so you can move again. They've helped so many people here and tens of thousands more around the country. So if you're living with chronic pain from arthritis or injury, you need to know steroids, surgery, and pain pills are no longer your only option. Learn how QC Kinetics can treat the pain to enhance your joints, restore your mobility, and give you long-term relief with no downtime. The local medical professionals at QC Kinetics are ready to help you get your life back with regenerative, restorative cellular treatments for your achy joints. It's the future of medicine. Call for a free consultation now at 615-249-4024 in Nashville, Clarksville, and Murfreesboro. Oh. One of the Oak Ridge boys passed away today, so Jackson's coming back with Elvira. He's singing it back there, too.
He's got a pretty good voice back there.
It was not terrible. Among the terrible things that Jackson has contributed to the radio show so far in his brief existence with us, that was not among them. One of the most terrible segments that we do is college football trivia, because it is a deeply embarrassing moment for me each and every summer when we do it, and nobody delights in my embarrassment more than Lucas, except for Josh Pate.
Except. So I got two questions. Number one, am I on camera anywhere? Is there a camera? Okay, I'm talking to this.
You're in a new spot. It's okay.
I have not made eye contact with Buck Rising yet, because we were about to roast this marshmallow. Because what happened last year was, I don't throw around the word tragedy lightly. It was a tragedy. You bat 500.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else.
No, we got to be extra careful about that. But in a game that we built to destroy you, you survived.
Yes.
And survival for you is the goal.
It was only by the grace of the end. I mean, you guys softballed it with me. You took it pretty easy on me, because Lucas came out swinging with who was the first team to win the BCS national championship in 1998, and I couldn't do it because it's not my national championship. So
my expectations of you were incredibly low last season.
Yes. So I love low bars because I can exceed a low bar at any given point. Today, I feel like this is a different game.
Then the next year, we take the bar and we just beat you with it.
Yeah.
And that's the next segment. So please, folks, if you're in the parking lot already, the meeting can wait another 20 minutes, because this will be fun.
All right. Start the game, I guess.
All right.
Good morning and welcome into the annual tradition, unlike any other, college football trivia with guest host Josh Pate. The game designed to make Buck Rising look like a fool, eventually ending in his ousting from this great radio station. Joshua Pate, how do you think Buck will follow up his impressive debut in this game? How do you predict the sequel performance will go?
I think last year was essentially the Thelma and Louise portion where they hold hands and go off the cliff, but you don't see the crash, and it was all glory. He is about to crater at the bottom of this ravine. I've looked over some of these questions. It is a minefield, the likes of which even an advanced college football mind would struggle to navigate. So this guy is about to completely implode in on himself like a dying star. That's my prediction. Back to you, Lucas.
So last year, Buck bat about 500, a little bit over 500, which was far better than any of us anticipated. Here's how the game is played. Josh and I will alternate with questions. We have a couple of listener questions sprinkled in. The best listener question submission will receive a free Feed Your Flock pack from Hattie B's, our fantastic sponsor, the best hot chicken in Nashville. You can tweet at Buck Rising for the question, or you can DM me at Lucas Panzica to submit your trivia question. By the way, in between these questions, in certain moments, we're going to throw college football players at you that have transferred. You have to tell us their new destination. Jackson will do the honors to just toss some players at you. It is going to count towards your score. So, Josh, if you would please get us underway with the first question.
All right, Lucas, let's roll with one that I think we could agree is pretty moderate in difficulty. I mean, even a casual should get this one. 3 current head coaches in the SEC played their college football for their current SEC team. Name all 3 coaches and tell me where they played.
3 college football coaches in the SEC played at the team that they're currently coaching now.
It doesn't have to be the team they're currently coaching. They
played college football in the SEC. Okay.
For teams that are currently in the SEC.
Okay. Kirby Smart played at Alabama?
Georgia, but
okay.
We just asked you to name the coaches.
I get that one. No, he tried to bog me down with I'm overthinking now. Okay, Kirby Smart. I'm trying to think of coaches who even remotely look athletic at this point.
I wouldn't go that route. They don't necessarily have to look athletic
Sam
now.
Pittman. Did not play college football in the SEC?
You really took that one to the extreme when I threw you the hint, huh?
Yeah.
I just went body type at that point.
Pittsburgh State.
Okay. So I've already lost.
Okay, I'll give you 2 more shots to name a current SEC head coach who played for a school.
Oh, Josh Heupel.
Jesus. Okay. All right.
I forgot about Oklahoma being in the SEC.
All right.
Relax.
You get one more.
Calm down. I am going to say that Steve Sarkisian didn't play in the SEC.
Quite the opposite, Buck. BYU. So, no.
That is quite literally the opposite.
The head coach you're missing is residing right here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Clark Lee.
He can see the studio out his window as we speak.
Yeah, he's probably cursing us on a regular basis for how little. To be honest, I forgot Vanderbilt was in the SEC too.
Hey, Buck.
Hey.
Where did former Alabama DB Caleb Downs transfer to this offseason?
Oregon?
Ohio State.
Okay. This is not going to go well.
I literally brought this up the
Also,
other day.
I don't listen to you.
If I could insert, you said previously, I lost this one. We prefer just loser. I'm a loser is what we prefer.
You're not getting that from me.
Moving forward, rules are rules.
You already called me a dying star, which touched a little too close to home for me. So I'm already a little defensive. You can't have them both. You can't call me a dying star and then also get me to say into a microphone that I'm the L word. I won't do it.
The L word. This former Titans wide receiver also holds the college football record for most career receiving yards and most career 100-yard games. Who is it?
Not a current Titans wide receiver.
Former Titans wide receiver.
Oh, my God. Can I get... Is it in the last decade?
Shrugging my shoulders.
How many SEC wide receivers have played for the Tennessee Titans?
Did I say it's an SEC wide receiver?
You
no,
did not.
I'm in the SEC mode now. All right, read me the question again.
This former Titans wide receiver also holds the college football record for most career receiving yards and most career 100-yard games as a receiver.
Derek Mason?
Corey Davis.
No.
Sure does. Sure does.
Western or Central Michigan?
Western Michigan. 5,278 career receiving yards, 27 career 100-yard games at Western Michigan.
See, the chat guessed Julio Jones, which I was going to go like Kendall Wright or something like that. I'm trying to think real off the wall. All right, Corey Davis, good for CD. Next.
The USC Trojans begin their Big Ten era exactly 20 years after their last national championship. You will receive full credit for the answer if you can tell me who USC beat in that championship game or who their quarterback was.
Leinart.
All right.
Woohoo!
I wanted to say that they beat Texas, but I don't think that's right.
No.
Texas won.
Texas won in the 06 championship.
Who did they beat?
Josh, do you remember?
Who USC beat in the 04 national championship game was... Hold on. 05 was the Texas USC game.
05 season, yeah. You're
05
right.
season.
Yes.
You don't even know the answers
No.
to your
I'm
own
saying,
damn questions?
I'm saying 03 LSU won it, and then USC got the AP. 04, they beat Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
They blew Oklahoma out.
That's
the
right.
year Auburn got boxed out.
Yes, for undefeated SEC champion Auburn didn't get a
Salty.
chance.
I'm sure they handled that very, very well.
They don't talk about that one much anymore.
How about that? All right, so is that the first one I've gotten?
That's the first one you've gotten. You
Give me a ding at least. Let me celebrate around here.
You are 1-3. Jackson?
Hey, Buck. Where did former Arkansas running back Rocket Sanders transfer to this offseason?
Oh, we had him on the show. Where did Rocket Sanders go?
He came on to talk mayonnaise, I believe.
He did. That was a weird interview. I don't know why we did that interview.
He was slinging mayonnaise.
Respectfully. I don't know why we did that interview. Is he at Michigan State?
Thank you, Jackson.
That was a very delayed buzzer.
Rocket Sanders plays for South Carolina.
Wouldn't have gotten that.
You're 1-4.
Okay.
Buck.
This is about how I expected last year to go. These are more on par, these questions.
Alabama head coach Nick Saban announced his retirement earlier this year. It ended the greatest coaching career in college football history. What was Nick Saban's first Power 5 head coaching job?
Michigan State.
All right. Well done, sir. Well done.
What was the group of five?
Toledo.
Toledo.
And I'm very proud
Go
of
Rockets.
you. I'm very proud of you because Most people would have said Toledo, and then he would have said, no, we said Power 5, and they would have gone straight to LSU. They would not have remembered Michigan State.
Well done.
No, Nick Saban's career is something that is very well documented. I feel like I should get a half point for that, but whatever.
Next up, the college football playoff, unfortunately, will officially expand to 12 teams after a decade of the 4-team playoff. Who won the first ever college football playoff national title in 2015?
It's not Urban Meyer in Ohio State, is it? How about that with the 3 quarterbacks that they rolled through that season? We didn't come here to play school. We came to play football. How about it? We're creeping back to Mount 500. I don't like this. I don't want it. This is what's going to kill me. This transfer portal thing is a nightmare.
Hey, Buck. Former Texas A&M defensive lineman Walter Nolan transferred where?
Ole Miss.
Oh,
Hey.
He's on a roll.
Could I just throw in another question?
No, because I'm winning.
What is happening right now is the next question.
I'm winning.
Okay, we'll see.
Am I at 500?
Well, hang on now.
Count towards my score.
You are 4-4. Yes, you started
that.
1-4. You've gotten 3 in a row.
You have 8 minutes to try and knock me off this pedestal. But I'm very
We're going like
perched
New
on.
Mexico State assistant coaching role in just a second.
Name the special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
So, Oklahoma and Texas officially enter the SEC in 2024. Missouri and Texas A&M entered the SEC in 2012. Who are the 2 teams added to the SEC before this, and what year were they added?
Missouri and Texas A&M.
Yeah, in 2012. But who were the 2 teams to come into the SEC
After?
No, before Missouri and A&M. Who were the last 2 teams to have entered the league, and what year did it happen?
Oh.
Who were the 2 newest members of the conference before Mizzou and A&M got here?
Okay. Arkansas?
That's 1.
And it's not South Carolina. South Carolina's been an SEC school. Are we waiting for something? What's happening?
I'm waiting for you to give a final answer.
Okay. Arkansas and South Carolina.
Oh, man, he's got 5 in a row.
He doesn't have the year. We need the
4
year.
in a row.
You tried to back me off of that, too.
I want to give him the point.
You tried to screw me over there.
I want to give him the point.
I want an extra point.
No,
for
we
that.
need the year.
No, I can't do the year.
1992. But I think we should
That's
give you the
before I
point.
was born. That doesn't count.
I think we should give you the point.
Before I was born, do they know that?
Yes.
Did it happen?
Yes. And none of this happened before July 20th, 1993. Go ahead. Come on, big boy.
Josh, the
Walk
floor
in
is
here all
yours.
chesty. Look at it. He's looking for the worst question he's got
I'm
on
very
the list.
slumped right now. The posture is subpar right now.
Dying star, he says.
Name one of the original SEC teams that are no longer in the SEC today.
Every part of me wants to say TCU, and I know that's not right. One of the original SEC teams that's no longer in the SEC. Have they since rejoined the SEC? Or is this current? Okay, that's fine. It's too many hints that I'm asking for. I am going to say, even though I know it's wrong, it's TCU.
Nah.
Yeah.
Not even close.
We had a good run.
I mean,
Hey, Buck.
So Georgia
Where
Tech's
did
there, right?
former
Georgia Tech,
Ole Miss running back
Well, hang on,
Quinshawn Judkins
he's not
transfer
even-
to?
Put your headphones on if you're going to play this game.
My headphones are on.
No, you didn't. No, they aren't, because you didn't hear either of them that you were talking over while you were asking me a transfer portal question.
we were talking about the former SEC. It could have been Tulane, Georgia Tech.
Was Sewanee in there?
Sewanee.
Sewanee.
Look, conference
The
realignment
University of
comes
the
for us all.
South. Okay, listen. Come on. That's not fair.
All right, Jackson.
Hey, Buck. Where did former Ole Miss running back Quinshawn Judkins transfer to?
Oh, I feel like this just came across my timeline the other day for reasons that are beyond me. The problem is the conferences. Kentucky.
Ohio State.
Really? That's a nice ad.
He's coming back down to earth, ladies and gentlemen.
No. The transfer portal only counts if I get it. That doesn't count against.
In
No,
what
it totally counts
participation
against
trophy world
That's
are you living
absolute
in?
crap. There's nobody would be able to do that efficiently.
I can promise you, sir, many people would know Quinshon Judkins.
None of the legions of SEC fans in the South would have
I don't
ever
believe
gotten
that.
any of those.
I don't believe that's true.
All these star players at their new locations.
Allegedly.
But who's the head coach of your Indiana Hoosiers?
There are those eyes. I was waiting for that. That's the deer in the headlights I came to talk to.
Oh, no.
Your beloved alma mater. Who is their head football coach, Buck?
Oh, my God.
I have a side proposition once you tap out on this question. I have a side proposition.
Wait. No. I've got this. Back off. I'm scared. I don't remember his first name, but I know the last name and I know where he coached last. Signetti from James Madison.
All right.
Eat it.
All
I
right.
get that one. What's your side prop?
I was going to give you his first name and think you didn't know his last name.
Is it Frank?
It's Kurt. I wish you said Frank
No,
Signetti.
Frank Signetti was also he was in the NFL
his
for a
dad.
while. He was okay.
Yeah, it's his dad.
That makes sense.
A coaching legacy.
How about that? Eat it.
Sir, what is the University of Tennessee's official fight song?
It's not Rocky Top. Rocky Top. What is the official fight song?
It's called Down the Field.
Would have played that a lot in that 1998 BCS championship run.
Allegedly. When they never use it. They never. I don't know that I've ever heard it.
I think they play it like immediately after touchdowns and then go into Rocky Top, which everyone sings.
Yeah, because they play Rocky Top after they score. They play Rocky Top at any given moment.
But Rocky Top has never been the official fight song.
Well, that's stupid. They should change it.
Hey, Buck. Former Alabama wide receiver Isaiah Bond. Where did he transfer to?
Oklahoma.
No.
Where is he?
He's at Texas. You know who this kid is, right? He's the 4th and 31. He's the Iron Bowl catch.
Gravedigger.
Yeah.
And now he's just not there anymore.
Yeah.
Because that's college football in 2024. Mm-hmm. Be part of an iconic moment and then just leave. For a conference opponent, yes.
I mean, truly, does that hurts those players, like, ultimately, because I associate, it's easier for me to remember players because of iconic moments. Like, you can go back through any number of them throughout the course of any college football season, but when they have the ability to move year after year that way, like, they diminish their own legacy. That has to be kind of frustrating.
Long term, he does. And here's the other thing. If a defensive-oriented coach were coming in and taking over for Saban, you're making a business decision to go play for Sark. Kalen DeBoer came in and took over for Saban.
Yeah.
He's called Caleb multiple times.
Well, he's like a kingmaker for the wide receiver and quarterback position. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Buck, what position did your 104.5 The Zone teammate and supposed friend, Ramon Foster, play in college?
He was a guard in the NFL. Was he a left tackle at Tennessee?
Oh, didn't expect you to get that
Look at that.
one. You are 7-8.
Oh, that honestly is a win in and of itself. This is the last one, right? We
got a couple more.
No. This is the audience submitted question.
We got a couple more.
I've already picked the audience submitted question.
Got a couple more.
7 and 10 or bust here. In 2022, very recently, well within your lifetime, Tennessee ended a 15-game losing streak against Alabama with a game-winning field goal. By which kicker?
The eyes.
State hero, local legend. Never pay for a drink or a meal again unless you're in the restaurant because you don't recognize
who this kicker is. It was a knuckleball kick, too. It just barely squeaked over.
And I think it was partially tipped, too.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was on the way.
I don't know the kicker's name.
Chase McGrath. He's literally best friends with Titans punter Ryan Stonehouse. They do like football camps
That's right.
together.
They literally
Yeah.
just did the McGrath Stonehouse kicking camp.
Oh, and the names were in the camp.
Oh, that one.
Incredible.
Hey, Buck. Quarterback Cam Ward, formerly of Washington State, where did he transfer to?
You need to know this. It's a big deal.
Indiana?
That wouldn't be a big deal.
That would not be a big deal at all.
It'd be a big deal if I got it.
He'd go play for what's his name? Signetti.
Frank.
This kid transferred to Miami.
I didn't have that at all.
And they paid a pretty penny for him.
How much?
And, well, it's well into the 7-figure range.
Okay.
He may or may not have held out on the first day of class for a little bit more money.
No.
You didn't hear that from me. Look, you did not hear that from me.
I love him.
Okay, we're in commercial break right now, right?
I love it. He's now my favorite player in college football. If he actually did that, that is excellent.
T. Johnson on the F&M Bank chat says, how is Buck so uninformed on pretty basic college football questions?
Because I didn't start paying attention to it until we got the radio show.
Such as, Buck, in college football overtime, what is the starting field position for each team?
The 25.
Oh, okay. That one was clearly too easy.
Follow-up question is, what should it be? Because I think it should be the 50.
I like that.
Yeah, that would be a lot. I
You
think
should
that,
not be
the
in
degree
field
of
goal range.
difficulty.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with that, but it's the 25.
It's the 25.
Okay, what's my record right now?
Hang on. Jackson, you got one while I count these?
Yeah, we're going to do one of the ones that I think we were going to throw out, and I know you're not going to get. What was the first team to ever voluntarily drop from FBS to FCS?
Drop from FBS to FCS.
Just the first team to ever say, we actually don't want to smoke.
We don't want to smoke.
Your record will be 8-11 after you don't get this.
I would struggle to even name an FCS program that's not North Dakota State.
Idaho.
Oh,
The Vandals
interesting.
would rather go back to FCS than be an independent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Kibbe Dome, though. One of the iconic venues in college football that everyone claims to love, but no one's actually been to.
I'm just so delighted with the idea of holdouts in college football. I want that so badly. I want that more than I want air.
Tell you what, I'll be here a year from now when he's no longer here and statute of limitations is up, and I'll tell you that full story.
That I look forward to.
I haven't even talked about this on my own show. I've just kept it under wraps, and it leaked today, and so that's just between us and whoever else may be listening.
Indeed.
Let me ask you this, though. Can you name me every defending conference champion in the Power 5? Even though we don't even have 5 power conferences anymore, rest in peace, Pac-12. Can you name me those defending, or I call them reigning, conference champs?
Alabama.
Ding.
Oregon?
No.
Do I get a ding?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Washington win it?
Yeah.
Sure
the
did.
team that ended up in the national championship game won their conference. Yep.
Oh, that's right. I forgot they were the national championship game this year against Michigan. That's right.
It's been a while. Can you go Big Ten?
Michigan?
Can you go ACC?
I don't think I can.
You can't even give a guess?
Who won the ACC? Did Florida State win?
Pretty unremarkable year. Just went undefeated in the conference. Yeah. And then in the Big 12, how did that culminate?
Texas.
Sure did.
Texas.
How about that?
That's
pretty good.
You went 4 of 5. I don't really want to give you Florida State because you asked a question. So I'm going to say 3 of 5.
I should get that one.
You went 8 of 11, or 8 and 11, I should say.
That's a win.
In the actual question.
That's a win.
Look at you.
That's a win.
Can I tell you
that's
this?
not a win.
Look at you.
Can I
It's not
tell
a
you
win.
this?
All 3 of you look disheartened. I've dismantled
You
your
still
little
have
game.
to wear the helmet of shame.
That's fine, but I won. I won today.
The thing about it is, he's right about the body language. I wanted to be exuberant. Like I wanted to pump this chair up to the highest setting, and instead I need to sink to the ground.
That's right.
Because 8 is about twice as many as I thought you'd get.
Eat it.
You didn't use the live chat. You didn't get answers ahead of
I
time.
didn't. You saw my hands. I didn't Google a damn thing.
You just legitimately
I won.
flirted with 500.
Josh Pate, Late Kick Live. Subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel where you can get the show itself. Do you want to stick around and talk some actual football?
I commit, yes.
You sweet angel. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Lucas has one more question that I wanted them to ask Josh Pate, if nothing else, because I know the answer to this. It's an audience-submitted question, and I don't know if Pate does. We'll see.
Two quick hit ones. First from Karen. When is the last time Indiana played in the Rose Bowl, and who was the opposing team's running back?
I don't know the answer to that, but was Lee Corso the coach of the team that went to the Rose Bowl?
When did Lee Corso coach Indiana?
I don't know, but I remember your microphone's off. Your button
18.
There it is.
Right here?
You got it now.
You got
it. My headphones aren't plugged in either. I have no clue why I'm even wearing it.
He was at IU in the
Wait, your headphones haven't been plugged in the entire time?
It's just this. Look, you think there's liquid in this?
No, that I knew. I knew you were doing a bit. We put a chalice in front of you just for the promotion of it. But
this just came undone. It was plugged in last segment. I have no idea.
Is 1968, and the opposing team's running back was USC's O.J. Simpson.
It was O.J. Simpson. 67, 68, yeah. I watched the 67 UCLA game the other day, actually.
Now my question.
So V-Love, he didn't reply. You have V-Loves. I didn't see V-Loves.
Okay, so Vincent Love, and this will be the person that we give out the $75 Hattie B's gift card to. Texas special teams coach Jeff Banks' stripper girlfriend's pet monkey attacked a kid on a roller coaster at Six Flags on Halloween in 2021. What is the stripper's nickname?
Y'all picked the wrong road to go down. The monkey's name is Gia. The stripper's name is Pole Assassin. And let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, and let me leave it here. Having been in a relationship for a year now,
yes,
with a girl whose last job was at the University of Alabama,
yes,
I have several stories on that front.
Phenomenal.
I want all of them at a later date. But first, we have to have a brief conversation because you were enraged by the conversation Lucas and I were having. Tiering SEC programs, what is your biggest issue?
So, to my understanding, you were talking about teams for this upcoming year, right?
Yes.
And you were looking at, the Bama, Georgia, Tier 1.
Yes.
And the first question you had was, is Texas the top of Tier 2 or the bottom of Tier 1? And to me, if we're just looking at team, that's Tier 1 team.
Yeah.
Like, I don't question. I think Texas may have the strongest quarterback room in the country. Because if Quinn Ewers can't get it done, you replace him with a dude who would be starting everywhere else anyway in Arch Manning. And they got dudes you don't even know the name of that are going to be big-time players down the road. So Texas Tier 1, if you're just talking about roster and not program, the odds makers would tell you Ole Miss belongs at the bottom of the Tier 1 conversation. But if you want to say Tier 2 there, that's okay. Just remember, extremely workable schedule. Georgia, to give you an example, goes to Oxford later in the year. I think if Ole Miss wins that game, they are in the SEC championship game. They could be in there with a loss. But elsewhere, Georgia will have already gone on the road to Bama, played Clemson neutral. They go to Texas, and they do all that along with playing Auburn before they go to Oxford. So Georgia secretly has the most toughest schedule as opposed to what they used to have in the SEC, and it's being covered up because everyone's talking about Florida, who plays like the AFC East. So I would push back on that. I would push back that you put Tennessee Tier 3, and Tennessee is solidly a Tier 2 team this year to me. Wide receiver room has a lot of names that are still there that I would argue underachieved to a certain degree last year because they didn't have a guy named Nico Iamaleava or Hendon Hooker throwing them the ball. They will have Nico this year. I also think the kid they got, the wide receiver transfer from Tulane, is a guy they whisper about because they don't want people to know about him, but he's going to be big time. 4 of their 5 offensive linemen I believe in because the transfer from LSU is big time, and 3 other ones are returning guys. But they talk about defense. When you're in the building over there, they just quietly brag about their defensive staff, how they've recruited line of scrimmage. So, they feel good about being a more balanced team, don't have to score 45 or 50 to win every week. They're a solid Tier 2. Missouri is a solid Tier 2. So it's a very fat top half of the SEC, which begs the question, what happens if we get to December and instead of your usual 12-0, 11-1, what if it's just a bunch of 10-2 and 9-3 and you have to fill out a 12-team playoff?
I love that scenario because that would lead to the kind of controversy and discussion that we were having around the Florida State situation, it feels
You'd
like.
have to bring in the National Guard.
There will be somewhere along the way. Somebody's always going to... There could be a 64-team college football playoff, and somebody will be on the outside looking in.
Yeah. I actively root for that scenario. I know this whole 12-team scenario is the bane of your existence, and when we further expand beyond this season or beyond into the future, I know that's going to bother you even more. But I very much enjoy, just for the purposes of our show, the discussion understanding that it diminishes the accomplishment of the teams that were able to be the Final Four.
You know, there's a thought out there that the playoff is going to get loaded up with SEC teams because of SEC bias, right? I think the opposite. Any given 12-team playoff, a bunch of SEC teams are going to be in because it's the best conference in the country. You'll have a bunch of Big Ten teams in there as well. I actually think there's going to be a scenario most years where the SEC has more qualified resumes than get in the playoff, because I actually think that SEC sticker is going to work against them. And what that would mean is, let's say Missouri's 10-2. Let's say Tennessee's 9-3. That resume, if you properly factor strength of schedule, would warrant them being in the playoff. But if you've already got 4 of them in there, those committee members, whether they're supposed to or not, are actually going to look and say, 9-3, Tennessee, like, yeah, these metrics say they're better than this 11-1 Oklahoma State, but we can't put a 5th SEC team in, can we? That's the way the conversation will actually go, instead of what the biggest fear of the country is, which is, let's find another SEC team. That's not what that committee's doing.
Just jamming it full of SEC programs.
So I think that'll be the controversy, because remember, the Big Ten and the SEC signed off on this thing, but they signed off on it so they get more of their own in. If they don't get more of their own in, and this is not even to explore if there's 2 qualified G5 teams out there, if they don't get more of their own in, that's when you start ramping up that whole breakaway, do our own thing conversation, which is on the back burner for now.
Love that. What a tease. That's why you need to subscribe to the Late Kick Live on YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast as well for the Late Kick Extra Pod. He does it live twice a week, and a podcast just for you in your podcast feeds. Josh Pate, it's always a great pleasure to have you in, bud.
Pleasure, sirs.
The final hour, including Keith Bulluck, Mr. Monday Night, coming up next.
It is 12:03. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. SEC Media Days start next week in Dallas. This morning, the Tennessee Vols announced their 3-player participants. They are offensive lineman Cooper Mays, defensive lineman Omari Thomas, and linebacker Keenan Peely. Tennessee will appear in Dallas on Tuesday. In other Tennessee news, star outfielder Hunter Ensley announced that he will return for the upcoming Tennessee baseball season. Vanderbilt announced their 3 SEC Media Day participants. Wide receiver Langston Patterson, offensive lineman Gunnar Hansen, and linebacker C.J. Taylor. The Commodores will appear on Monday. In NFL news, former Vol and current Steelers cornerback Cam Sutton has been suspended 8 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Sutton was charged with misdemeanor battery earlier this year while he was still with the Detroit Lions. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us. Lucas is disheartened, which means that I'm in a great mood because I won the college football trivia.
You did not.
In dramatic fashion.
That is revisionist history.
I'm a winner. You're a loser.
You're just less of a loser than we all thought you would be. But you're still wearing the helmet of shame tomorrow.
That simply means as long as I'm less of a loser than you thought I was going to be, that's a win in my book, baby. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. Keith Bulluck will join us in about 15 minutes from now, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll look forward to talking some Titans position battles with KB here in just a little bit. Speaking of KBs, I should say that a quick congratulations to Kevin Byard. Did you see he's going into the CUSA Hall of Fame yesterday?
I did not. That's awesome.
He is indeed. So one of the most prolific players in Middle Tennessee State's history goes into the Conference Hall of Fame to his credit. So I know he's very excited about that, and we are happy for him. Actual Titans legend, Kevin Byard, not, the joke that we like to play.
How about that Corey Davis stat?
That is a good Corey Davis.
Isn't that insane?
Because I remember that when they drafted him.
Most career receiving yards in college football history.
I mean, at a time, it was a weak wide receiver class. Not to do the revisionist history on it, because it was him and Mike Williams, basically. And I know John Ross was the other first-round pick.
Yes.
Of the 3 wide receivers that were taken in the first round.
And we're talking about, it wasn't the most productive receiver of his class, the most productive career in college football history.
No, I know. I remember that. That's what I'm saying. I remember specifically them trotting that out, the PR staff putting that out there. And, justifiably so. It was very impressive what Corey Davis was able to do. By the way, he's back here locally. I think I mentioned that earlier. I ran into him the other day. You can find me for that if you like. And he is continuing to train to try and get back into, because he had a weird, I don't want to say weird, but he had a retirement situation where he was placed on the reserve retired list by the Jets. Then he wants to come back and play football, apparently. So he is back here locally. He's always lived here, apparently, but continuing to train and trying to get his NFL career back on track. So well done by him.
By ran into him, do you mean waited outside his house for him to come outside? Like, oh, Corey, it's crazy to see you here.
No, you want to really find me, we go to the same health club. You can hit me again with that, Jackson, if you like. Thank you. How about that for pretentious? But yeah, no free shout-outs. Arete over there in Green Hills takes really good care of a lot of different people. So we like that. I'm going there for some cryo later today. That's fun. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. You can also interact with the show on the FNM Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. So speaking of Titans wide receivers, did you see this headline from Pro Football Talk about a week ago, a little less than a week ago? Joe Burrow. The Bengals have had a fair amount of change this offseason, right? They lose Tyler Boyd in free agency. He becomes a Tennessee Titan. They lose their offensive coordinator to the Tennessee Titans and becomes their next head coach, becomes the next head coach here in Tennessee in Brian Callahan. They let Joe Mixon walk. He goes to the Houston Texans. So it's going to be a little different in Cincinnati around Joe Burrow this year. And I saw this quote from from Pro Football Talk, or from Joe Burrow, rather, that Pro Football Talk wrote about, on how excited Joe Burrow is that his offense will be more versatile with their personnel, not specifically citing because Tyler Boyd's no longer here or Joe Mixon's no longer here. But I thought it was pretty interesting that he thinks they are going to be more scheme versatile with the parts that they lost. And they did. I believe they added Mike Gesicki, the tight end, who's basically a glorified wide receiver in the offseason. Quote, with the personnel we have this year, we'll be able to do a lot more with personnel groupings, is the quote. Putting different people in different spots and doing a lot of different things as far as eye candy and making teams adjust their personnel based on ours. Now, that doesn't sound like a shot at Callahan or at Boyd or any of the players who have departed the Bengals in the offseason. But it's hard for me to not kind of like turn my head at that a little bit and saying, oh, Joe Burrow, who is renowned as one of the most savvy processors, one of the most efficient processors and cerebral quarterbacks at the position in the game, is saying that they are going to benefit from changes in personnel, where the Titans are just happy to get anything that falls off the Bengals bandwagon, it sounds like, in the last couple of years. Am I being overreactionary, kind of cocking my head a little bit at Joe Burrow saying they're going to be more scheme versatile without the parts that they lost?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they were pretty set in their rotation, right? You knew who you were going to be dealing with that wide receiver core. But that is interesting, and how that applies to the Titans in terms of, does Tyler Boyd's presence alone limit how versatile you can be with DeAndre Hopkins? If Boyd is a guy that's almost strictly going to operate out of the slot. And DeAndre Hopkins did a lot of that last season.
Well, and that's, so we had Dan Pizzuta of the 33rd Team on the radio show, about a month ago, would you say?
Yeah.
And that's something that we talked about as well. Lucas had heard an interview that he had done with the Athletics Football Show where they were kind of, is it unfair to describe it as disappointed in the Tyler Boyd signing, because they would have liked to see more DeAndre Hopkins working in different spots, including the slot, and adding Tyler Boyd makes it a very, very slot-specific player.
Yeah, the context of the podcast with the discussion Pizzuta and Mays were having was exactly that, in that they had gotten excited about what this next phase of DeAndre Hopkins' career could be, late in his career, working out of the slot, and then the Boyd signing kind of made them rethink that. So I asked Pizzuta if he was almost disappointed in what the Tyler Boyd signing could mean for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, a little bit, because Boyd is such a slot-only type of player. I think he, had the highest or second highest rate of snaps in the slot among wide receivers last year. So he has kind of a very specific role that he plays. I think the best version of Hopkins and Ridley is kind of when you can move them around a little more. I thought some of the best stuff that Hopkins did last year was when he was moved in the slot for about 20% of his snaps. I think he kind of just has that feel, able to get separation off the line. That works really well when he had some of those, two-way goes out of the slot. When they're going to be in 11 personnel with Boyd on the field, you can't really slide one of those guys into the slot because that's where Boyd has to play. So I think it does kind of congest that offense in a little bit in some of the versatility you could have had otherwise. But I don't think Boyd is going to be, in 85% of the snaps type player. So I do think there is going to be a little more versatility kind of changing in and out of some of the personnel that Tennessee is using. But I do think the best versions of Hopkins and Ridley is when you can move them around. So I do expect that to happen, but just I think they're going to be stuck on the outside a bit when it is a Hopkins, Boyd, Ridley 11 personnel package that's on the field.
So that's Dan Pizzuta of the 33rd Team describing a slight level of disappointment in seeing the Titans sign Tyler Boyd, because it was going to lock them into just, almost exclusively deploying Boyd in the slot. He's not an outside wide receiver. So I get the point, and to hear Joe Burrow say that out loud as well also piques my interest in saying, listen, it can be good for Tennessee and also be good for Cincinnati. I'm not saying that this is a mistake that the Tennessee Titans have made just because they've added Tyler Boyd and it's going to box them in a little bit.
And there are ways the Titans can be versatile with their offense that the Bengals did not have the option to be in terms of the running back position.
Correct.
Right? Joe Mixon was what he was. He was the bell cow. He was the guy in the backfield for Cincinnati. And we've talked about how interchangeable Pollard and Spears can be.
So I just found both of those comments, a couple of weeks, about a month maybe, separated from one another. Pretty interesting, especially given that we'd had that conversation with Dan when he joined the radio show. 615-737-1045 is the number. Speaking of Titans conversation, Keith Bulluck will join us for some coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, the best hot chicken in Middle Tennessee. Not just in Middle Tennessee. They're in Dallas, they're in Austin, they're in Vegas, they're in the Nashville International Airport. By the way, if you're flying out of BNA, you've got an early morning flight, or if you've just got a morning flight. The factory in Franklin is not the only Hattie B's location that serves breakfast. The airport location does as well, so you can get all the good stuff. The honey butter biscuits, the chicken and waffles, all kinds of great things alongside the excellent Hattie B's menu. And download the app. You can get it mobile ordered wherever you are, at your home, your office, or wherever you would like your hot chicken delivered. So, training camp, not too far away. 23rd is when they report. 24th will be the first practice. By the way, for those of you who listen to the radio show throughout the course of training camp, we will continue our training camp coverage from the Titans facility, and we'll have our very expansive. How many players did we have on the show last year? I mean, it had to be 10 to 15
like
easily.
dozen.
Yeah, Levis. Who else did we have last year? We had Levis, we had Burks, we had Malik, we had all kinds of
Murphy
players.
Bunting.
So if you enjoy interviews with your favorite players from the practice field right after they've finished practice, you can tune in throughout the course of our training camp coverage live from the Titans practice facility. It will be a great time. And with a bonus, which matters, I think, a little to you, more to us, training camp practice is a hell of a lot earlier this year. So I'm actually going to get to cover almost the entirety of the practice before the radio show starts. And we will get you more informed than we were able to do last year. So I'm looking forward to that, too. With training camp right around the corner, the NFL, or rather ESPN's NFL coverage, does these positional rankings where they Jeremy Fowler polls a bunch of league executives and coaches, and they come up with a top 10 at every position group. So to date, running backs and defensive tackles have been ranked. Now, particularly, those have been the two position groups that Titans fans have been able to pride themselves the most in, because your running back is has been Derrick Henry, which is still a weird thing to think about. I don't know. I guess because we've had a whole offseason without Derrick around, it's not as weird to me, but it still kind of feels weird to talk about the Tennessee Titans without Derrick Henry on the roster, no?
It also felt like we were trending towards the end of the Derrick Henry era, like kind of, especially midway
three
through.
different occasions.
Yeah, but midway through last season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at this point, I think most people have accepted it.
So, this latest one to come out is defensive tackles, and I would be curious to see how the audience feels about Jeffrey Simmons' ranking. So, the best defensive tackle, the best interior defensive lineman in football is who?
The best interior defensive lineman.
It's an easy answer.
Quinnen Williams?
No, it's Chris Jones by a mile.
Chris
There
Jones,
is nobody who consistently impacts a game, who wrecks a game without Aaron, because remember, Aaron Donald retired this offseason, so Aaron Donald, perpetual number one on this list. Chris Jones is absolutely number two. Quinnen Williams is number two on this list. Quinnen Williams is a really, really good player. Dexter Lawrence is 3 of the New York Giants. And if I'm not mistaken, Dexter Lawrence was drafted like 2 or 3 spots before Jeff in that 2019 draft class by the New York Giants.
He was pick 17, yeah, so 2 spots ahead of Jeff. And he last season was more available than Jeff, certainly. But, 4.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss in 16 games.
And worth noting that they did shut Jeff down once they were clearly and obviously out of the playoff contention, which I think we all knew pretty early on in the season, but still, they waited a while before they ultimately shut Jeff Simmons down. So Jeff Simmons comes in at 4 on this list. The description: Simmons is the classic eye test player. His stats aren't always gaudy, but coaches and scouts know he wrecks games plans. Quote, when he's focused and sets out to make a lot of plays, he's pretty much unblockable. A head scout with an NFL team said, I think he'll have a big year, similar to Justin Madubuike in that same Baltimore scheme last year. Added an NFL personnel evaluator. His power is probably the best in the league. I don't think he's played his best recently, though. Simmons' 37% run-stop win rate was impressive. His 21.5 sacks over the past 3 years ranks 7th among defensive tackles. Do you think Titans fans will take issue with Jeffrey Simmons ranking of 4th among interior defensive linemen?
No, I think Titans fans would argue he should be above Dexter Lawrence, but
Not based off last season.
Yeah, I don't think that there should be an outcry. I mean, if they're not ranking Jeffrey Simmons outside of the top 10 and ignoring Jeffrey Simmons.
D2 square. Well, immediately somebody takes issue with the description.
How dare they?
In the chat, only takes one, right? Going back to the line that I read, when he is focused, ? Has his focus ever been a question? I personally have never had cause to question Jeffrey Simmons' focus. But I will acknowledge that he is not the most impactful interior defensive lineman in football, and I think a lot of Titans fans kind of project that on him, that they want him to be. They want him to be the next Jarrell. They want him to be the next Hainsworth in a mold for a franchise that has had really quality interior defensive line play throughout the course of its history, and Jeff Simmons can be the next guy to carry that mantle, right?
I will say he has always been a more productive player than Dexter Lawrence. Including last year. He had more sacks playing less games. Less games.
Okay, but here's the thing, Lucas. You and I had a conversation about stats not that long ago, maybe a week ago, maybe sometime last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. And I think you and I were both in agreement that sacks are a stat that's a bit flimsy when you talk about it. That pressures are the better measure of an individual pass rusher, and sacks are the better measure of a pass rush unit.
Yeah.
So if we're going to stick to that logic, does that level the playing field or perhaps change the equation if we talk about pressures versus sacks? Because I don't buy off on sacks being a good way to measure an interior defensive lineman, because they're just not going to get that many. More often than not, the sacks that they create are guys cleaning up on the edges like Harold Landry and Arden Key or whatever edge rusher that you have, because one, it is faster to get to the quarterback through the interior, and when you push the pocket, you cause the quarterback to move. If they move side to side, your edge rusher cleans it up, and they are the ones who drum up the sack numbers. Not that sacks aren't important, but I think sacks are less important than we oftentimes make them out to be. Now, if you're negotiating a contract and sacks are the figure that you're negotiating over, then that's all well and good. You want as many good numbers as humanly possible.
So Aiden Hutchinson led the NFL in pressures.
What are you looking at?
Last season. I'm looking at Pro Football Reference. Now, this is not strictly for defensive tackles. This is just advanced pass rush stats for the entire NFL. The interior defensive lineman with the most amount of Montez Sweat, we consider an interior player.
He plays on the inside, but I would look at him kind of like an Autry.
Yeah, fair enough.
Autry is technically considered an interior player.
He had 40 pressures, Montez Sweat. Chris Jones had 39. Myles Garrett had 37.
So I'm gonna fine tune this a little bit with Pro Football Focus to look at the pass rush grades for defensive linemen specifically, interior defensive linemen specifically, and how they measure pressures. Now, teams will have their own number. Outlets like Pro Football Reference and Pro Football Focus will have their own number. How the teams graded are probably more important than how, these ancillary websites determine the pressures. But if I look at total pressures among interior defensive linemen last year, how far down on the list do you think I have to scroll before I get to Jeffrey Simmons?
Out of how many on the list?
Well, the list, I can go as many as 200, but let's just say the top 50. Say the top 50 players.
I would guess, top 20 at worst.
You'd be wrong. He's 22nd.
Okay.
He's behind Malik Collins, Devontae Wyatt, and Fletcher Cox.
Wow.
Chris Jones, and this is based on last year's number. And again, I'm looking at Pro Football Focus, their advanced metrics, their premium stats. I pay for Pro Football Focus so that we can get the premium stats.
How many pressures for Jeff, by the way?
Jeff's total pressures last year, 47. Do you know who led the league in pressures last year? Interior defensive line pressures.
Was it Jones?
It was Chris Jones. Do you know how many Chris Jones had?
39.
No.
That's what I had.
Okay. 91. So this is why I like Pro Football Focus better, because they attribute a larger number because of the different ways that you can pressure the quarterback.
Yeah.
So in this category, how I get to my 91, I'm looking at sacks, hits, hurries as my means of determining my top figure, right? So if Chris Jones has 53 quarterback hurries, 23 quarterback hits, and 15 sacks himself, then that equals the 91 pressures. Jeff Simmons, next to those numbers, Jeff played in, now, and also worth noting that Chris Jones played in 20 games because the Chiefs made the Super Bowl.
This is including playoffs.
Is regular season and postseason.
All right.
So, worth noting, Jeff Simmons didn't make the playoffs, so he's inherently going to be lower down on this list. But still, if I told Titans fans that Jeff Simmons ranked 22nd in overall pressures last year, they'd call me a liar.
I don't know. I mean, again, he missed a good portion of the season at the end. 4 games missed last season, and a few of those games that he played in that he was not 100% Jeffrey Simmons.
Somebody on YouTube says, Big Jeff is listening. And my response to that would be, good. He needs to be better.
Well, hang on.
No. Wait just a second, Lucas, because I want to make sure that I address that comment. Jeff Simmons, I appreciate that Titans fans support their players, and I appreciate that you guys have a lot of love for Jeff Simmons. But if you're going to ask me if I think that Jeff Simmons has almost underachieved to an extent, I'm willing to say yes. He needs to be a better football player.
Since the contract, I think you could say that.
Since the contract?
He earned the contract.
He earned the contract.
But since the contract, availability has come up as an issue, for sure, and he has not had the production that you would associate with the contract that he got.
Agreed. But the idea that Big Jeff is listening or whatever, good, he needs to. He needs to be a better player. He needs to be elite for the price point that he is paid at. And I hate to pocket watch that way, but once you get to a certain number, that's how you're going to be judged. Jeff Simmons is not good enough based on his contract value.
I will say, Chris Jones, based on those pressure numbers you just read, he finished with 10.5 sacks last regular season. So you don't have the number of season pressures.
I can do this. I can do this with regular season.
Well, either way, Chris Jones had 11 total sacks. He only had half a sack in the playoffs last season, which surprises me.
I don't care. I care less about the sacks.
I know. But what I'm saying all that to say, you said he had what, 91?
91 total pressures.
91 total pressures.
Now
So Chris Jones got home with a sack once every 8.3 pressures.
Yep.
Jeffrey Simmons got home with a sack last season once every 8.5 pressures.
Yep.
In the games that he did play.
But still, if I boil this down to regular season, where do you think he ranks in total pressures?
Jeff?
Mm-hmm. Just regular season.
Based on what you said with playoffs and everything included, I'd say, low or high 20s.
18.
Okay.
18th. But still, for the price point, Jeff Simmons needs to be better. Now, he played in only 12 games last year. And I would say Jeff Simmons needs to be better. He needs to be more available for the amount of money that you're paying. You remember and I only bring this back to Lawan because Lawan was a polarizing player. He's a loudmouth for a left tackle, so it was easier to hit him over the head with shut up and play football, right? Jeff is now in that space where I'm looking at him, and I'm not saying, shut up and dribble or anything like that. I'm not one of those people. But I am willing to have the same kind of discourse that we had around Taylor Lewan after he got paid around Jeff Simmons, because what was the biggest knock against Taylor after the contract? He wasn't available. Now, I'm not saying to that extent. Taylor's drop-off was significant and had to do with a botched ACL repair in which he's currently in litigation over. So he's in a lawsuit over a botched ACL repair that cost him probably the rest of his career. But if I'm looking at the top of the list and I have to go to 18 to get to Jeffrey Simmons on interior defensive lineman, it's not good enough. It's flatly not good enough. Regular season total pressures, Aaron Donald was the leader. Chris Jones, second. Quinnen Williams, third. Ed Oliver and Dexter Lawrence tied for fourth. So if you say to me that Dexter Lawrence has never been a more productive player than Jeff Simmons has, Dexter Lawrence played in 16 of a possible 17 games last year. He had 65 total pressures. He had a 45 quarterback hurries, 14 hits, and 6 sacks. If you want to give me just sack numbers, then you can win that argument. But I think that is an easy way to make an argument for Jeff Simmons if you want to make the argument for Jeff Simmons. And I'm saying that you need to look more closely at these two players, if those are the two that you're going to compare next to, and say, well, no, lately, Jeff hasn't been Dexter Lawrence.
I look at sacks heavily because ultimately sacks win games and sacks get players paid. So I like the idea of figuring out the average of pressures between sacks, like a sack every X amount of pressures, right?
So if I go that way, and I can do this with you as well. Now this skews it a little bit.
For Dexter Lawrence, it was 11.5 based on the number that you just read me. He got home with a sack every 11.5 pressures that he generated.
Yes.
And for Jeff, it was 8.5. For Chris Jones, it was 8.7.
So again, if you're arguing for Jeff Simmons over Dexter Lawrence, I don't know that your argument can be made on solid ground.
I think the biggest argument against it comes down to availability.
Yeah, he needs to play more football.
Yes, he needs to play, and he hasn't been 100% in a lot of moments, and he's played through that to his credit at the end of 2022 and in moments last year. And who knows how many games he does play if the Titans aren't out of playoff contention at the end of the year. But availability is the biggest mark in the last 2 seasons, probably against Jeff.
So I've got some mixed review, and you're welcome to chime in on this if you want to. 615-737-1045. You can also do so on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, where I've got a variety of different comments in the live stream chat. I've got everything from Duck Falling saying Jeff Simmons has put it in cruise control, which I disagree with, to somebody on YouTube saying, Buck, stop putting paint where it ain't. Gotta love talk radio comical. I disagree. Based on the numerical argument that we just made for you, Jeff Simmons is underperforming. Now, how much does this change? Because he's always needed help. They can't do this alone, right? Chris Jones is on a great defense, arguably the best defense in football last year. Dexter Lawrence, while the Giants aren't an overwhelmingly good defense, that front is not substandard. They've got good players there. Aaron Donald is a bit of a force unto himself. So I'm willing to put him in a category alone. But I think that for Jeff, do they have sufficient help for him without Danico Autry? Because remember, Jeff Simmons and Harold Landry were part of the worst third down defense in the history of football since the merger. So it's not like Jeff Simmons unto himself can be this kind of Aaron Donald figure, or at least he hasn't been yet. I'm not saying that I'm down on Jeff Simmons by any stretch of the imagination. But for the price point, I think it's okay if you are. I think you can expect better. I think you can demand better. And I'm certain that Jeff demands better of himself. I'm not somebody who's going to sit here and bash him for only playing in 12 games last year, because I think are we all not in agreement that it made more sense to shut Jeff Simmons down at the end of the year once they were clearly and obviously out of the playoffs? Of
course.
Then, because you don't want them to continue to play through injury to no end. There's no postseason on the line at that point. Okay, take the best players out of there. You could argue that they should have done it sooner. But if my expectation of Jeff, based on the contract, is to be a top 5 defensive tackle, then to date, he has underperformed since the contract was signed. And there's nothing wrong, in my estimation, of expecting better of that kind of a player.
Has he underperformed when he's on the field, or has he underperformed because the numbers are lower due to lack of availability?
Both. I think that they are an underperforming defense. On the whole, would you not say that and they were middle of the pack?
Yeah, they were an average at best defense last season.
But if the best player is the best player on a middle of the pack defense, then what does that mean? You need to be better. The defense on the whole needs to be better. I'm not advocating that Jeff Simmons unto himself needs to do it all. He can't also play linebacker and also play cover corner and also do all the things that make a defense successful. I think some of that can be attributed to a lack of defensive talent around him in previous years. That's not an unfair argument to present. And also, Jeff Simmons needs to be better. 615-737-1045 is the number. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, we'll update some polls, get you out of here over to Blaine Bishop. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Fun show today. Pate already tweeting out just dumbfounded looks on my face of the college football trivia game that we played. So if you missed that live, you can check it out via the podcast. You can also rewatch it on YouTube if you're so inclined. You should check out the podcast anyway. Subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating on the podcast if you're so inclined. And if you leave it with a comment, perhaps we'll read that comment at some point or acknowledge that comment's existence because we like to see the ratings and reviews. We haven't pandered for ratings and reviews in a while. So maybe you say something nasty about my hair or something like that. As long as it comes with a 5-star review, we're good. That's all good. 615-737-1045 is the number. Last call for phone calls. If you got them. Other than Titans training camp around the corner, it has been a pretty dead time in the NFL, news-wise. SEC Media Days on the horizon. I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot more next week. And, of course, 3HL. I'm sure we'll probably bother Dawn at some point to come on the radio show, you think. It's always good to have Dawn on because, not one, because she'll bust my ass on whatever she wants to, but two, because there's few people more informed about that conference than Dawn Davenport. So we will see what her availability is between their trip to Dallas. What are you most, if I'm not gonna be the thief of your joy this year, and I'm gonna try and play nice during SEC Media Days, what are you most excited about?
I have no idea. I don't know who the most entertaining figure is at SEC Media Days.
Lucas.
I have no idea.
You can't tell me that this thing matters to you and then tell me, I don't know.
No, truly though. Like, I'm trying to figure out who's the coach that people are crowding the room for now, because Nick Saban's gone.
Sark. In Dallas, Sark.
That's what's going to change the vibe of this thing, because it's in Dallas, fewer local beat writers. Like, how many South Carolina local beat writers are going to fly out to Dallas? How many newspapers in Columbia, South Carolina are going to pay for several reporters to fly all the way to Dallas for Shane Beamer and South Carolina players' Media Day appearance? It's going to be heavily Texas and OU.
Well, we're talking to Pate about this. The problem is, beyond my issue with the concept of media days in general, right? Same issue that I have with Super Bowl Radio Row. It's a wasted exercise just for famous people to come along and shill Spam or Guinness or whatever other product they're trying to sell. Beyond that, and there not being any true information to be gained or learned, it's the fact that it's going to hurt local coverage to turn it into this circus, this destination type of thing, this Super Bowl knockoff, because you're right. Local newspapers, are they thriving as an industry right now? Not particularly. Budgets are being slashed for a lot of different media entities around the country. I mean, you look at what NFL Network has done with the layoffs. You look at what ESPN has done for the layoffs. It's a very weird time in the media atmosphere where cost cutting is at a premium and coverage is going to suffer as a result. When you turn this thing that's supposed to be fundamentally a preview magazine, if nothing else, but you take away the people who know it best and who ask the best questions and who know the players, who know the recruiting, who know the stories better than anybody, and you generalize it just because, hey, let's take this thing to Dallas. Let's do it at the Star. Let's have Texas and Oklahoma be a part of it. Let's put on a show. And then you don't allow for the ease of the coverage. I'm not just taking up this cause because I'm a media person advocating for other media people. I'm taking up this cause because I think it's going to hurt the audience.
I mean, like you said, it is largely a week-long SEC preview magazine. And college football fans, SEC fans, eat up preview magazine stuff.
Sure.
So they're going to be listening for their head coach to talk, to hear their players talk, to get excited about the upcoming season. But it wasn't that long ago we felt like we were kind of looking around like, oh, we're suddenly in this golden era of SEC head coaches at a podium when you could go to media days and see Jimbo Fisher talk, see Nick Saban talk, see Mike Leach talk, see Lane Kiffin talk.
Brian Kelly.
And now, Mike Leach, rest in peace. Nick Saban has retired. Jimbo Fisher is out of the picture. So I guess Lane Kiffin is always going to be a draw. I guess the Oklahoma-Texas thing is going to be a big draw. And Eli Drakewitz says wacky stuff, and he finally had a season to back it up last year, but he's still the head coach at Missouri. So it's an interesting time for SEC Media Days for certain.
Polls, please.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What in sports made you say, oh no, this week? Goody says Buck trying his best to blend in at Ron Slay's wedding. Mike says Bronny James in the Lakers offseason summer league play. Eldon says the idea of a plucky upstart country in Uruguay managing to make it into the Copa America semifinals.
That's pretty good. Do you see the tweet that he's referencing about Slay's wedding?
No.
You see the Biden clip going around of him looking completely disoriented at a black church? No. So I tweeted out the video and I said, me trying to blend in at Ron Slay's wedding because it's just Biden kind of not even moving, turning around. There's a black chorus in the background, singing, dancing, praising all the things. And Biden's just kind of standing there looking lost. So I said, that was me at Slay's wedding.
What needs to happen for Tennessee to be considered elite in the SEC this season? Karen says beat Georgia and Alabama. Eldon is back in the replies. He says take down either Georgia or Alabama and go with only one loss into the 12-team playoff. Brian says you got to win 2 of 3 between Bama, Florida, and Georgia. You have to beat Florida this year.
You have to beat Florida.
You have them at home. That Florida-Miami game week 1 is going to be a massive tone setter. Like, that is a loser wants to fire their coach game for either fan base. If Billy
Cristobal's
Napier
already kind of in it, feels like.
Well, player talent acquisition has been going decently well at Miami. Cam Ward is the quarterback transfer from Washington State. But, yeah, no doubt, if they lose to Florida week 1, fans are going to be calling for his head. Same goes for Billy Napier. Got to beat Florida at Neyland Stadium. Mr. Donkey says change the end zone paint scheme. That's how Tennessee can get back to elite status. Which I could not disagree with more, obviously.
Oh, yeah. It's checkerboard, right?
We asked people to stump Buck with a college football trivia question, and there were some good responses. Roy says, he asks, what's the oldest rivalry in the SEC, Buck?
Is it Auburn and Georgia?
Yeah, it's the name of the Deep South's oldest rivalry.
Yeah.
Mike asks, who was Colorado's opponent in the famous 5-down game that they won?
I don't know.
Famous game where they got 5 downs. They repeated 4th down.
I don't know how many times I have to say I don't know before you answer the question.
Missouri is the answer.
Okay.
Taylor asked which 3 teams were founding members of the SEC that no longer play in the league. We read them off. Do you remember them?
Did you say Tulane, Swanee, and who?
Georgia Tech.
Okay.
Who is your preseason pick to start at linebacker for the Titans next to Kenneth Murray? 47% are going with Jack Gibbons. 39% are going with Cedric Gray. 11.4% say Otis Reese.
I think it's going to be Jack Gibbons. Prior to preseason starting, I feel like it's going to be Jack Gibbons, but we'll see.
Feels like that is a very legitimate competition that will be taking
very
place.
much so. I think a lot of Titans fans would just like to pencil in Cedric Gray because they didn't like the Jack Gibbons experience last year, and I wouldn't discount him, at least in the early going.
Those are the polls.
Very good. That's the show. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Like I said, check out the podcast. If you missed any of the last 3 hours, we are available to you in all your favorite podcast feeds. Like the video if you're hanging out on YouTube on the way out the door. Stick around. You got Blaine Bishop coming up next.